Hi again. This is Dr. Mike Nelson. For those of you that read my books, I'm Michael Dees. Everybody, everywhere, sooner or later, acquires a mentor. Someone that we think back on fondly, although we might not have thought so at the time, who made an impression. And because of the impression that they made, we made a turn in our lives. Maybe it was a sharp turn, maybe just a little veer. But every single one of them played a part. And there's a lot of them in our lives because we live a lot of different lives. Today I want to tell you a story about one of them, and then I want to tell you what it meant. Many years ago, when I was younger, I was a little bit down and out. I had come back from the Army, and I was a little bit lost. And I got to the point where, as Jim Morrison once said, I've been down so damn long that it looks like up to me. And at that particular time, when I was angry and down and out, I met Dr. Bill Bayon. Now, Bill was a very good doctor, but he also was an expert in seeing character in people. And Bill was one of those people that comes along when you least expect it. They're put in your path, and there's a reason. Now, Bill was also a really good storyteller. And the reason he was a good storyteller was because he was such an excellent student of human nature. So, one story that Bill told me 40 years ago has stayed with me my whole life. And it made a difference, just like Bill did. Bill tells a story about going into the local hardware store one time. And in a small town, hardware store is pretty much a hub for social interaction. Wouldn't we like that right now? And there was a fella that worked in the hardware store, let's call him Bob, who was kind of slow in his motions and his assistance. You could ask Bob where something was, and he'd say aisle 4. And you could go to aisle 4, and it may or may not have been the correct aisle, because Bob didn't pay a lot of attention. You could give Bob your lawnmower blade to get it sharpened, and he'd take it down to the basement. 10 minutes later, he'd be back, and he'd forgotten the lawnmower blade. Well, one day Bill went into the hardware store, and he noticed that Bob wasn't there. And he said, "Where's Bob today?" And the owner looked at Bill and said, "Bob's not with us anymore." And Bill said, "Well, that's a shame. Who's going to fill his vacancy?" And the owner looked him right in the eye and he said, "Bob didn't leave a vacancy." And the point of the story is that the lives we live are important, but we also have to make them meaningful. And by being meaningful, we fill the vacancies that are necessary. Now, in that regard, I was like most other kids back in the late 60s and early 70s. I didn't take life very seriously. And one of the requirements back then was you went to college and got a student deferment, or you got drafted. I got drafted. And after all the training and everything else, of course, I got sent over there. And I spent my first Christmas away from home. And about a month later, a package came for me. It was my Christmas present. And there was, silly things, and there were little packages. There was a cake that had the corner gone out of it, and there was a hole in the box where the mice or rats had gotten in to eat my Christmas cake. There was a ski sweater, really good for the jungle, and there was a cassette tape. And on the tape, they had set the tape up, and everybody had wrapped Christmas presents, talking and laughing, and each one came over and spoke into the tape recorder. Hi, Mike. We miss you. Merry Christmas. Even my grandfather. My grandfather was like my dad. Never say two words when one will do. What he said on the tape was, we ought to all take this crap and throw it in a gunny sack. Good for a smile. But at the end of it, there was this rustling and moving around, and then you could hear a door close, and this voice comes on and says, hello, Mike, this is your dad. Well, I knew who it was. And he went on for about 5 minutes. And I'm not going to tell you what he said on that tape. I know you're scared, and I know you need to do what you're doing. And I know you're going to be okay. But come home. And it was such an important tape to me that I played it and played it and played it until eventually the tape finally broke. And those words come back to me all the time. I know you're scared, but I know you'll do what you need to do. And then later I met Bill. And Bill told me, never live your life so you don't leave a vacancy. And those two lessons are probably the two most important things that I can pass on to my children. And that is, make sure that you get to the end without not leaving a vacancy. And two, make sure that you do what you need to do. And share your story. Make a tape. Pass it on. We all know so many things. This is Michael Dees. And the rest of these YouTube videos you'll find on Michael Dees' YouTube website. Or go to the webpage, www.michaeldees.com. I really thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it, and I'll make more.